I am here to signal again that something has gone horribly wrong. On June 19th, I brought forward concerning materials that I both took off the shelf and found on a list provided to me by the principal and librarian of Carmen Collegiate. This happened during a meeting and a tour of the library. And although you identify having two of the three books in question, and although you deny having two of the three books in question, you seem to have missed the point. Whether they have now been removed or not, all three books were in your library and were being made available to students. And the fact is, you not only have three books, you have a special room designated for sexually explicit materials. One of your teachers appeared to defend this sexually explicit material, stating, quote, "Books serve as portals to knowledge, understanding, and empathy." And so we ask, how does she equate knowledge with, quote, "He had a dirty picture of a woman attempting sexual intercourse with a Shetland pony"? And when did the educational definitions of empathy and understanding come to mean, quote, "Guys do that, they do, whole basketball teams do it. Circle jerks, that's what it's called, you know?" In your statement to the public, you also appear to support this material, and so we ask, can your goals for diversity and inclusion be met with, quote, "He grunts and struggles trying to fit himself inside me. With a sudden thrust, I am torn in two"? What are the social development outcomes when students are handed, quote, "Let's pretend I'm here with you, big butt and all, getting ready to suck your brains right out your dick"? And how does professional judgment apply to, quote, "Feeling worldly," she replied, "You know, I like guys to hurt me." After that, he started to tie her up and beat her with various objects. She shudders into orgasm without any perceptible joy. You can call it by whatever name you want. It's lipstick on a pig. More truthful words to represent this material would be pornography, sexual abuse, coercion, predatory, paraphilia, rape, incest, bestiality, pedophilia. There is no governing body dictating how publishers should catalog their books, and books are not given ratings in Canada. That means it is your responsibility to decide which books enter our schools. Tonight, then, I will ask very blunt yes or no questions of this board, and this time I expect real answers within the next 2 weeks. Question 1. Trustees, is it your position that Prairie Rose School Division supports the following for minors in your publicly funded schools? Materials that instruct on A, sexual touching, B, paraphilia, C, how to engage in sex and sex acts with adults. Question 2. Do you support the following for minors? Materials that contain graphic, detailed, written, or visual depictions of A, child sexual abuse, B, sexual acts between adults and adults, C, sexual acts between minors and minors, D, pedophilia, E, bestiality, F, paraphilia, G, rape. Question 3. Is it your position that materials as outlined in question 1 and 2 can be used by educators, instructors, assistants, or guests as resources and instructional material? I will remind you that policies and procedures concerning respect for human diversity as outlined by the Public Schools Act and intellectual freedom as outlined in the Public Libraries Act must submit to and align with the Criminal Code of Canada. Question 4. Does Prairie Rose School Division recognize the ultimate authority of the Criminal Code of Canada's definitions of pornography, child pornography, instructing minors on sexual touching, and child exploitation? During the June 19 board meeting, another Prairie Rose School Division's teacher stated, quote, "If students are reaching for books that I think their parents may not approve of, just like other teachers and librarians in the division, I have a plan in place to communicate with parents asking their permission for their child to read the book." Where was our phone call when our daughter brought home a number of books that we did not approve of? We didn't get one. How is it possible for every teacher or librarian to know each family's beliefs? They cannot possibly know that. If each staff member of this division sees the need to have their own personal procedure regarding sexually explicit material, it is time to create a universal policy for the division. Every quote read here this evening, has come from a different book being made available to minors in your schools, and the materials presented this evening only scratch the surface. Quote, "You nailed my wrists to the ground, turned my breasts into bruised fruit." Quote, "Come on now, cat. Let me feel how wet you are." I didn't know what he meant. I pressed my spine into the sofa to get away from him, but moving like that raised my hips and loosened the hug of my shorts. His fingers slithered under my panties. Quote, "For the first time in my life, I realize why hangers are called hangers. All I want is to hook one to the top of my closet door, lean my neck into the loop, and let my weight fall. My mother will come in and think it's some autoerotic asphyxiation where I didn't even have time to get my dick out." Quote, "Sometimes the movie she showed would be an old porno film, women hanging from trees or upside down, naked, with their legs held apart, women being raped, beaten up, killed. Once we had to watch a woman being slowly cut into pieces, her fingers and breasts snipped off with garden shears, her stomach slit open, and her intestines pulled out. For many, trust in your institution is hanging on by a thread. The public wants to know, what are you accepting into our schools and handing to children in the name of education? What is the line? The expectation is that you see minors as minors, and just because an author has imagined or lived an experience does not make it educational. We do not consent to our children being exposed to traumatizing materials while in your buildings. We do not consent to materials that normalize sexual abuses and grossly unsafe sexual practices being handed to our children. And the basic assumption is that no staff or guest in your building would teach or provide materials that would place them in a position of liability for sexual abuse or exploitation of a child. We expect our children are safe. Though not nearly the last, I will leave you with one final book. For context, understand that the rapist is both the father to the daughter he is raping and her baby. Quote, "So he on me. Then he reach over to the baby. Start with his finger between her legs. I say, 'Car, what are you doing?' He say, 'Shut your big ass up. This is good for her.' Then he get off me, take off her pampers, and try to stick his thing in the baby." Question 5. Is this board ready to create a policy surrounding all materials entering Prairie Rural School Division schools to protect all minors from contact and non-contact sexual crimes in Canada, as outlined by sections 151, 152, 153, 163, and 171 of the Criminal Code of Canada? Are you ready to create a policy that applies to all materials being used for any purpose, whether being used by guests, teachers, principals, librarians, educational assistants, or parents where minors are involved? My final question this evening is rhetorical. Where is the evidence-based research that supports exposing our children to highly sexualized materials that we, now adults, were never exposed to ourselves? It doesn't exist. It can't. It is prohibited by research ethics to perform experimental studies on minors. Should you choose to keep these highly sexualized materials in your schools, you are making the decision to participate in the unprecedented, wide-scale sexual experimentation of children. Although this conversation is uncomfortable, I believe that you have been elected into your positions for a time such as this. Thank you for your time this evening. The public awaits your responses.